Good evening, everyone. Tonight we're going to continue with our dissertation on the archetypes of the major arcana in the Tarot. And tonight is everyone's favorite topic, which is death, the number 13 card. And so before we get too far into it, I'd like to give everyone in the room in the Zoom panel an opportunity to just quickly give us a little bit of insight about what you think about the death card, and then we'll go further. So Samantha, you're in my upper left corner, so you go first.
Okay. All right. Okay, so what I get from the Rider-Waite, just by looking at it, is this concept that death comes to us all. It's no respecter of persons. And I get that because we see an elderly person who's dead. We see someone who looks like they're sort of fawning, about to be a young girl, I believe, female looking, and one's male looking. And then we see someone who's in the religious, hierarchy. What's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, someone who's in the church, and that basically it comes to us all. That's what I get from the image. My experience of it is, and I'm going to relate it back to the tarot, is that I lost my sister to cancer. I've now exceeded her age, so I'm the youngest of four. My sister, closest in age, passed from cancer a few years ago, and now I'm older than her. So that's the first person that I've really had a closer connection to that I lost. Before that, when I'm going to connect it back, so I know I'm getting personal, but when my grandpa—
That's okay. We want to hear about your personal experiences.
Thank you. When my grandfather passed, I was in college, and I wasn't really close to my grandfather, but I remember at the funeral, I wasn't not close to him either, but I didn't have like a— Anyway, at the funeral, I remember I was sitting there and I was supposed to get up and sing. And I was just sitting there, and it felt like I was feeling everyone's feelings, like for them. And I was wailing, and I got it together right before I sang. But I just had this like outpouring of being like suddenly so sad. And I just look back on that and I wonder, especially now I'm doing tarot, I've started doing divination for others. And then people are like, well, are you psychic? Are you intuitive? I don't necessarily know what to call myself. And I kind of don't always know what I believe. I try to approach it agnostically. But in terms of this idea that you can be
Call yourself gifted. Call yourself gifted.
Just don't call me late to dinner. Okay, Skip, because you said so. But I just let people— it's sort of like being a Buddhist or a vegan or something. If you really are, you don't have to talk about it all the time. So I just let people think what they want to. But the reason I bring it up about what happened at the funeral is that I reflect back on that, and I think, man, is there something to that about— it's like I felt like I was feeling everyone's sadness. And they say that can happen if you're empathic, and especially if you're in a family where, like, let's say some people aren't feeling their own feelings. They even break it down to psychology that one child will feel everything. And that it felt kind of like that. So that's what I got on death. That's it.
Okay, Raquel, your turn.
What I think about the card is actually about transformation, but it's a very hard one because you have to give something away to receive something. But in the process, you don't actually have that awareness to be releasing something, to receive something. And to me, I think the death card is kind of like a bridge card, in a sense of it's like, it's a moment that you are between two different worlds that are not connected, and two different worlds that don't speak to each other. It's the spirit world and the human world, and you are in the middle of it. And I think that is a very hardcore experience in every way. So that is what I think about the card.
I will come back to you, Judith, but let me go to Nick next. Just a quick one, Nick.
Okay. Let's see here. Well, the thing that comes to mind for me is oddly all rooted in agriculture and the idea of the passing of seasons, the falling of leaves, and the time at the end of fall, the beginning of winter, and regeneration as well.
Okay. Manuela, do you want to give us something that you think about this card?
Well, I can say that the first time I get the dead card, I was a bit scared. But then I start to look at the card, and for me, it always remind me to the War of Roses. I don't know why, because of the rose, the white rose.
Yes.
And there is something about my Catholic point of view, not about, I know that it's about transformation, but it's also about the life after death, and because there is the bishop and the king and the voice, and but reminds me it's a bit sad for me. I know it's about transformation, but always it's sad for me. It's a card that is sad because it's not a funny card to get.
Hey, Jordan.
Yeah, to me, a big picture of death is about transformation. The phoenix, which is that life after death, and the renewal, especially the renewal that then comes through the phoenix. Nick, your agricultural aspect really resonates, because my primary two concepts I use that I've worked on for years with the death card are death as the master gardener and death as the mother of memory here in the eternal present, where it's the mother of memory and that nourishes the future. So to me, it's the confluence point, the thing that none of us don't have in common. My personal example is that even grief itself transforms. In 1993, when my grandfather passed, we were kind of best friends. And I flew back to Texas, and I remember standing over the open casket at the family service before he would have turned over in his casket if we left it open to take him into the church. But I was standing there and he wasn't there. I was looking at him, but he wasn't there. And my stepmother really kind of caught the vacuum of my energy, and she came over and put her hand on my shoulder and she said, "What's wrong?" I said, "I'm not crying. I have no feeling whatsoever. That's not him. He was full of life, and now where is he? He's not here." And mind you, I'm 26 years old. Or 24 years old. But I had those wonderful childlike concepts of, well, I should be doing this. And she leaned forward and kind of came into view without interrupting the focus on him. And she said, "It's okay. We all grieve differently, and we each grieve differently each time. Allow it to transform. I appreciate that you're sitting here staying vigil with him." So that's, to me, a death piece where I lost an expectation. I was able to then transform to be fluid, and like a snake, my skin shedded. The snake did not miss the skin, and I was renewed. So that, to me, is my short sketch vignette on death.
Okay, Nicole, your turn.
Hey, I actually didn't look at the card because I've been traveling and I'm
Okay, well,
So maybe I should
we're gonna
pass.
look at the cards later, so in a few minutes, so
Right.
that's fine. Jimmy, you want to talk about it?
Sure. So when I think of the death card, I imagine that every time we make a choice, there's some form of death that happens. When we choose a direction to go in the field of possibilities of things that could happen, like those other possibilities, if for that moment, die and get reconstituted into the choice that you've just made. And I think those things can probably happen with even little choices or large choices that we make about our lives. And the bigger the choice or the bigger the more importance we give it, the more painful the death is and the more we recognize it, I guess. And then all the other deaths that don't have any importance to us, we don't notice. So it's always it's happening all the time, whether we realize it or not. It's part of the reconstituting of things that are energy, I guess.
Okay, Oliver, any thoughts on the death card if you have any?
Yeah, sure. I think because of the visuals on the card, people get distracted from the fact, I mean, not you guys, but generally people get distracted from the fact that he's got a sai in his hand and he's actually harvesting. So I look at it as the natural cycles of life and death. But harvesting is an important thing to do, and you don't, again, going back to Nick's agricultural thing, you don't leave the fruit to rot on the tree. You harvest it and then you build yourself with it. And I think that's what he's doing, because he seems to be growing, like his body has got bits on it that are different to other bits. And I think he's getting that from his harvest. So he's not waiting for time to part. He's not holding on to something material. He's letting it go so that he can grow. In this picture that I'm looking at, the Marcellus, he's putting stuff on his body, but I feel it's more developing yourself through harvest of your, good or bad deeds. Yeah, that's probably a completely different way of looking at it than most people, but that's the way I sort of see it. Yeah, and I guess that the underlining thing is the change, the transformations.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So Colleen, you're a newbie to the tarot, I understand, but if you want to have any observation on death, that would be welcome. And we can't hear you. You have to unmute. Can't hear you. Yep. Okay, at the moment, we cannot hear you, Colleen. So let's move on to Annabelle. But Colleen, just see if you can unmute your mic, and then we'll come back to you. Annabelle, do you have a thought about this card?
Yeah, I do. So the deck I'm working from is this Marseille Italian deck.
Mm-hmm.
And I hardly know how to begin to speak about this. This Grim Reaper with his, scythe there resembles my dog in that the face is skeletal. The like the joints where the front legs, I mean, he's even bent over in a way that is very animal-like. My dog was 15 years old, and you know, the joints would go out of place if we walked too fast sometimes, and he wouldn't even tell me that. Today, my dog got 2 injections. The first was sedation, as they called it, and the second was lethal. And it was because last weekend, he attacked someone on Saturday in a kind of mild way that was familiar to me because he's a dog who had attacked people. But on Sunday, he attacked someone in a going for the kill. So that in itself was a facing of death for me. When a friend of mine used that expression for that, grabbing with the teeth and then going, right, trying to shake the thing to death, which was the woman who had been this rescue dog's foster mom, whom he had never bitten or injured in any way while he lived with her. I had the dog for 28 weeks, and we really worked a lot out. One of the things that came into my mind when I left the vet's office, the vet had been his vet for his entire life, all 15 years, and told me some history about other violence and viciousness of the dog's experience. I started using the word vicious for the dog when I would describe to people who I met on the street. About 6 weeks ago was when I changed my language to vicious from dangerous, or from be careful, or from the dog might be fearful. The dog was blind and mostly deaf. So there was a lot for him to be afraid of. And that song that I thought to myself, I never liked this song by The Doors. And it was just that phrase, "This is the end, my only friend," the end. And then I drove to the cemetery, which was just like directly across the street from the pet hospital, which I had not, you know, I didn't have a plan. The only plan I had was that I had told them at work, I'm going to be gone for about 2 hours at a doctor, right? And that entrance to the cemetery was closed. I had to drive completely around Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn and then go the main entrance. There it was with funerals. A very close friend of mine who I knew since 1972 died yesterday at 1 p.m. And one of the people this dog bit last weekend was the companion of that man's former wife, with whom he had 3 children. And one of those children I spent a lot of time on the phone with this week. And the last time I saw her was in that Greenwood Cemetery. So obviously I could talk for hours. I read a lot from the Book of Living and Dying by Soja Rinpoche today. But I want to say that I've been showing up here, right? The card last week, L'Homme Pendu, right, the hanging man. I didn't speak about it when I spoke about the card, but I was in a limbo where there had been these events, but I hadn't made any decision. And there was this transition and suspension. And I didn't know what was going to happen. For all intents and purposes, I thought, well, this dog is just going to stay with me. But as it kind of digested, I realized I'm in danger, he's a liability, all this stuff. And then on Wednesday was when the vet gave me a lecture, you know, like, you know, and you have to think about this. So this week, I didn't look at the email that this was going to be the card. So in true Jungian, you know, coincidence, and there are many other around this event today, these events of my day today, and these decisions of my life this past week, including a couple of conversations with my Jungian therapist. But it's just, you know, long story short, no accident. This is our card tonight. I'm here. And thank you, Jordan, so much for everything you said. The leaves were really a big part of it today. And my dream last night was of trees and the roots of the trees, which is a lot of what that dog taught me about. So
You are so welcome.
Thanks very much.
I appreciate that that could resonate with you.
Yes, very much.
Okay, I see a few more folks who are here. I'm not sure you want to speak, but is Paul there? Do you want to speak about this issue, about the death card? You'll need to unmute, sir, if you're going to do that. We cannot hear you until you unmute your phone, your microphone, sir.
Hello there.
Yeah, now we can hear you.
I'd just like to say death is really the big taboo, isn't it, in life? It's always been, it's always impacted on me, and I'm very much aware of what it means in the inner death. I mean, I think it was St. Paul who said we die daily. There's something in us that I'm getting quite emotional when I'm speaking, because it's almost like, in a way, I feel giving up the ego, and it's a constant battle that we're faced every day. We come up against so many obstacles, and in the world and in ourselves, and it's always been something I think we should all reflect on. Absolutely. I know it's a Buddhist practice. It's a Buddhist practice, and it's a very important thing that we should always be constantly aware of, because we take, sometimes I know that myself, we take life very much for granted, and we should be grateful every moment because it's a gift. That's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Okay.
I've got something I'd like to add to that too, since you bring up St. Paul. St. Paul also said, "That which thou sowest is not quickened, except it die."
Very good. Yeah. Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Every birth promises a death. Colleen, I think we can hear you now, maybe.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Annabelle, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that with your dog. I'm a dog lover, and I had to put my dog of 18 years down a few months ago, and it was like yesterday, but it was one of many dogs that I've had to put down, one for the reason that you did too. We had a traumatic death in our family when my son died 20 years ago, a traumatic death that still haunts the family. And I wondered, what was I supposed to learn? What was I supposed to do to heal our family from this experience? And I had a wonderful teacher, Baba Haridas, for many years. And Babaji told me that my job around this death was for me to learn to die a good death. And that's a tremendous lesson, to learn to die a good death. A good death is one in which other people are not caused pain by your death, that other people can handle your death. And that's what I'm trying to do. And I'm, in my last phase of life now. And so that's the teaching that I'm living by. So the card, thank you. Card is perfect.
Okay, Alicia or Curtis, do you want to speak for Saskatchewan? If I recall correctly. Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Curtis.
Okay. Hi, I just got one thing to say here. Me looking at it, I'm looking at the Golden Universal Tarot, and I see a ship on calm waters behind them, and kind of the moon card foreshadowing in the background there, the sun rising. And so when I look at this, I kind of get the feeling that it's how the rest of your story and how your journey is going to go from the death card to the world card depends on your relationship with death, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, great. Nancy, how about you? Nancy Bennett.
Hey, I'm brand new. I don't know a lot about tarot. I've had a little bit of exposure through friends, but I can relate to some things that people are saying. I think Jimmy said about it's really how you react to it, and I also think we have deaths 1,000 small deaths in our lives daily. I mean, just as we go along, and it really provides an opportunity, and it's really how we react to it.
Yep.
So
Okay.
that's it. Thank you.
Jing, I'm going to pass you on this one since you weren't at the beginning of the conversation. Judith, did you want to comment on this as well? And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I resonate with a lot of what different people have said. What comes up for me is the cycle of self-transformation in the runes, and that continuous cycle of death, decay, gestation, and rebirth. And being in that liminal space where you have to let go of who you were and going towards the unknown. I've been there a lot. So it's how to navigate those waters is what it means to me.
Okay, so I guess I'm going to pass Jing because she came in quite late and so she doesn't have context, but I'll just give you a quick overview of my thoughts about this. First of all, the death card has always been very jarring to me. And I think there's something rather funny. I'm not going to tell you whose book this is in, but it's a discussion of one of the decks about death. It says, no, you're not going to die. That's just a common misconception about the death card. Well, that's not true. You are going to die, but so is everything. And at the same time, everything will go on living. You know, I've had up close and personal experiences with death since I was 6 years old. And one thing I know is that after my mother, father, and brother died, they are still with me every bit as much as they ever were during their lifetime. We don't have any new experiences together, but I still feel like they're in the next room from me, number one. Number two, I live with a woman who is a Tibetan Buddhist teacher, but in addition to that, she's taken a program on assisting people through the death experience. And she works for Hospice of the Chesapeake, and as a volunteer in her spare time, she goes and sits vigil with people who are dying. And so I have death around me all the time. And I just remind everyone that the monks in the Middle Ages would meet each other in the morning, and the first thing that they would always say to one another is memento mori. And I believe what they meant by that is that was something like make the most of the life that you're in. And, you know, we all are immortal in some way, and so are all of our ancestors, because we're the bloom of that right now. And going forward, whether we have children or not, it isn't even the issue, because we pass our spirit down through whoever we run into in life. And I just want to mention one other thing, and that is Ernest Becker, his book, Denial of Death, which Bill Clinton claimed he took on his honeymoon. Hell of a thing to take on your honeymoon. But anyway, it's a brilliant book. And because of that book, I got to know a professor at Vassar named Sheldon Solomon. And Sheldon is one of 3 professors around the United States who've made a specialty of terror management theory. And by terror management, this isn't about terrorism. this is the fact that, as Ernest Becker said in Denial of Death, we make a lot of decisions in our lives because of trying to deny death, deny that it is coming. But as you will hear in the rest of this evening, this card is about many things. It's not about human death per se. It's about transformation and moving on and change in any project that you're in, or a relationship, or all kinds of different things. So it's not all about human death. And so I just want to say one more thing, and that is carpe diem. You know, if you're going to pass your spirit down through the ages, you need to do something in this life that's going to make a difference. And certainly there are good examples of that. That Jesus Christ did that, the Buddha did that, Abraham did that, Jacob did that. You know, the writers of the Bhagavad Gita did that, and many others. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Beethoven, Dostoevsky, you name it. And so those things, if you want your personal legacy to be out there, you need to do that in this lifetime. And so that's why Memento Mori. So at this point, I want to go to Nick, who I promised to give a chance to talk about these two cards together. So I'm going to give you the two cards, Nick, and you can go for it.
All right. So on the left is the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and on the right is the Bota deck. And as you can see, they're quite different from one another. The builders of the Addendum deck looks much more like the Marseille deck, and I quite prefer this one. The Rider-Waite-Smith deck is very well done, but I just think the symbolism of the death card on the right side gets at the idea better, for me at least. But it's interesting, I can't remember who brought this up, but somebody brought up the fact that these two towers in the back of the RWS card look exactly like the towers in the Moon card, and I've pointed that out before too. I've never heard anybody else point that out, so that's cool that somebody else has caught that too. But so just what I have prepared to say about this card is I kind of alluded to already with saying that it has so much to do with agriculture. I mean, it's obvious by the tool that he has in his hand here, but I wanted to relate it to the idea of the changing of seasons and what that means for us psychologically. So I always feel like as spring approaches, I have tons of new ideas that are just beginning to take root. Things are really, new life is sprouting. Things are beginning to grow and return again. And then as I move into summer, generally I always feel what I wrote down was very Apollonian, but that's just a reference to the sun god of Greek mythology, just saying that I feel very full of vitality and full of energy, and typically a pretty introverted person. But even during the summer, I noticed that I feel more extroverted and just full of resourcefulness in terms of my own energy. And then as fall starts to come, the leaves start to change, the leaves fall, and I start to feel myself actually begin to recede within myself. And then as that progresses, and we get towards the end of fall and move into the first phases of winter, I usually try to approach that period in my personal year as a way to let myself die and let all the things that I have as a part of what's going on for me that no longer actually serve my personal growth or the way that I want to live my life. I allow all those things to die at that point in the year. And I usually go very deep within myself and have a long period of introspection. And so that's kind of the primary meaning of the card for me. And I relate that to agriculture and the changing of the seasons, because that's fundamentally the process of farming. And, the changing of the seasons, I feel like if we look at that as an analogy for what goes on in our inner world, it can really give you a great guideline for how to move with the seasons. And I also I wrote a little thing here that I would like to share. And it's, if anybody wants to answer it, that's fine. But it's kind of just a rhetorical thought. So I wrote, as successive deaths occur for the individual, something always remains intact. Am I that person which dies each year, or am I the person who bears witness to that death?
Okay. Well, I just, before we go on, I just want everyone to know that the card on the right, the Bota card, the Builders of the Aditum card, is one that you do the coloring on. And so when Nick wanted me to do this side by side, I decided to start coloring in my Bota deck with the death card, the first one to do it with.
Oh, you did this one?
Yeah, I did that
cool.
one. That's mine. And I did that this morning. And the reason that they want you to color your own cards, even though they tell you what colors to use, is that they want you to gain an experience with the card. And I just want to attest to the fact that I certainly did develop a relationship with this card as I was doing this coloring. And there's another book that I'll tell you about later besides the Bota deck where you can do that. But just some of the symbolism that they talk about in the Bota deck is, first of all, whenever there's death, there's a sunrise. This is a sunrise that's going on behind him. And there's three hands in the picture. Two of them are active and one of them passive. The cut off foot, he claims, represents the end of the Piscean age. And the sunrise represents the rise of the Aquarian age, for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, it probably has to do with the fact that Pisces rules the hand and the feet, hands and the feet, and Aquarius is the water bearer.
Okay, yeah, sure. That makes sense. And so there's the river flowing behind him and so on. And there's supposed to be, I'm going to show you the real card because I sort of flubbed mine. But there's also a rose on the card. So this is the real card. And here there's a white rose in it. And the white rose represents hope and purity and so on in life. And obviously all the greenery represents that as well. And so
there's one more thing that I'd like to say before we move away from this card. And it picks up on your everything that you said before we started about the biblical tarot. So as you see in the Bota decks at the bottom, they've got the number of the card, the title of the card, and then a Hebrew letter associated with each of the cards. The Hebrew letter associated to this card is Nun, and Nun means fish. So the biblical story that I associate with this, for a variety of reasons, which I can go into, but I don't know if it would be wise to go super far into it. But since it is a fish, it brings to mind the story of Jonah and the well. And Jonah goes west, away from Nineveh, instead of east. And west is typically the land of the dead, rather than east being the land of the rising sun. And then he's swallowed up by a fish and regurgitated. So you see that dynamic playing out in this card. In the east, there's the rising sun, and in the west, where he is at, is the land of the dead. So I think that that's relevant amplification material, but I don't know if we can really go much further into it.
I can. Well, something that makes me think of, first of all, thank you. There's a lot of rich commentary going on, and I appreciate your poetic question from before, Nick. And so 2 things I want to say. One is, this is to amplify, I suppose, but also, I know this is the character that is fish, but the Christian ichthys also resembles a fish.
Of course.
And that, of course, is the concept of resurrection. So
Yeah.
Occurring alongside this concept of death, right?
Yeah, it's funny. In the book of Revelation, they also say, I believe, that Joshua or Yeshua is the son of Nun, which is the fish. So essentially that Jesus is the son of the fish. And also that the fish and the sea are one.
Interesting. That's cool. And then the other thing is, now I want to go into numerology. Okay, so the 1 + 3 is 4, and that can be either a foundation, or this is how I divine it when I see it. It can be a foundation, or it can be a box, a trap. So in this way, same thing with death, is we can let the fear of death trap us, and paralyze us with fear, or we can let it give our life value and meaning and be a foundation upon which to build our life.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is, what the heck is going on in the upper left-hand corner?
That's important. We can't miss that.
What is that?
Just a minute. I'm going to give it back to you.
It's a seed or an egg, depending on the way that you look at it. Maybe the Orphic egg.
Right.
I think it's a UFO.
Or a UFO.
Well, that would be an egg too, because things come out of it and take things away.
Samantha is talking about this, and this is in what the Bota said about it. It's a seed, and it's intended to be left blank.
But it's weird that they would put a seed up there. Why?
Because seeds fly in the air. They
Dandelion.
fly to other places.
Well, and there's also the higher self that seeds all life within, as a metaphor there. And also, Skip, you brought up the sunrise. The Egyptian way was to live like the sun, to each night at dusk bow and die, to sleep in death, to then reawaken at dawn and meet the day. So there's that cycle that just was continuous about the transformation too, which goes right with the seed at a different scale.
Yeah, Nick, there's a mention in the Bota reading about this being a Tau, representing a T, Tau in the Hebrew.
Yeah, that's what I was...
This is Tau also here?
Well, no. That's the Hebrew letter Nun.
Okay.
But the end of the tool that he's donning is the T, which is the Tau. And that was what I was talking about last week. We see in so many different cards iterations of this Saturn symbolism. And if you look up, Saturn in classical mythology, he was always a god of agriculture and of death and dissolution. So it plays to that
god of restriction.
Right? Yeah.
Limitation, a god of limitation.
I'll look for...
Well, primarily like limitation, but limitation as it relates to time. And time, has everything so I'm actually preparing a little thing just kind of for my own edification that I plan to maybe send to you guys. I know that I alluded to this Saturn thing last week and was not able to give a sufficient enough example of what I was saying. At least I felt I was not. But Saturn primarily relates to time. And if you think about the origin of time comes from the passing of celestial bodies and stars through the sky. And also farmers move directly in alignment with all of those things. I mean, if you've ever read the Farmer's Almanac or anything like that, you know that that's a major part of how people plan their agricultural year.
Right. Now, there's a couple things on YouTube here. One is Keisha says she believes the card to be about rebirth. With every ending comes a beginning. And you could certainly comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly the essence of the card too, because with all of this stuff about death, a regeneration is implied too. And I think it's also necessary to point out that there's a certain element of destruction that's inherent in all of that, if we want to change the forms that exist in our life currently, we have to destroy the old to make room for the new.
Right on.
And that takes the idea of the phoenix renewal in a powerful way.
Right. And does one of you want to take this, which is Homo sapiens says, or actually it's Homo sapien. So I don't know if it was intended to be Homo sapien. But anyway, it says, can someone speak to the context of the trumps that surrounds the death card? It seems to me that the Hanged Man before and Temperance after both have a role. Anybody want to take that?
That was actually one of my third pieces that I cut as to advance the topic, but it's a good one, that there's connective tissue between every major arcana that precedes the upcoming card and then is a prologue to precede the card succeeding it. So with death, you have the Hanged Man. So there's your sacrifice, there's your loss or your emptying of inner contents to be clean, at which point, in one way, you are desiccated of what you had. You are dried out, you are cleaned out. The vessel has been turned upside down and emptied. Then you move to the death card. And then Temperance comes right there afterwards. So what happens is that in that renewal, you can look at the death card as the garden. And then as the phoenix comes up, what happens is it's bringing the figure that's renewing up through the ground. But this time it's not superficial. Before, the cards have been dealing with touch and things pulling and pushing, but the death card actually emerges through. The phoenix comes out of the ashes. So you have an interdependence of figure and ground, which then move to Temperance. And the way I, for example, design Temperance, it's associated with the Hebrew character Samach, which is basically an O with a nice pigtail flourish. And what's interesting, that, of course, as you'll respect, Nick, I had no idea about Samach when I did that. But what happens then is the Temperance card, the Phoenix comes in absolute balance, because then it's going to move to a different tempering to the Devil, which is next. And I'll stop there. But that empty the vessel, level playing field, call it Job, Phoenix rise from the ashes, in an interdependent balance to Temperance expresses that connective tissue. And the space between the cards, the psychic synapse, or simply just the interstice, or just the property lines between them, to me are also very often overlooked places that really help to learn the cards, because you'll get one whole train of all of the cards that function together with their cargo, as it were, within the cards. If that speaks to the question in somewhat of a concise way, it's a large topic.
Yeah, I think note bene, NB here, I think that means note bene, says that the skeleton looks happy in the Bota deck. And I want to make an observation from Jungian psychology, which is that the psyche actually makes death a goal late in life. Mm-hmm. And, I have already run into that in my own life, because every time I go for a walk and I'm in huge pain with my replaced knee, I say, boy, I wish I was dead. But anyway, That's just an observation.
Well, our gain, Skip.
Say it again.
I know you experience that as your loss, but it's our gain. Not the time.
Here's my suggestion: don't break your leg, and don't get a knee replacement unless absolutely necessary. Okay, I want to move on to our friends in the She-Wolf and Starman decks, and so
Skip, before we move on, can I just give one more personal thing
okay,
about the
go
card?
for it.
So I'm glad somebody brought up the cards that go before and after, because I think it's pretty difficult to talk about any of the cards in isolation. I think that they always need to be considered within a sequence. And again, one thing that it was made clear to me after thinking on it that I failed to do last week was talk about the Hanged Man in a way that was practical. And it's kind of one of those cards personally for me that I take some kind of banging my head against before I really feel like, okay, now I completely understand this card. But it occurred to me that I've certainly had a Hanged Man period, and it made me think about a time when I was probably, I think I was 19, and I was just living a very unhealthy life. I wasn't taking care of myself really in any way, and I got really sick, and I eventually had to have surgery and have all kinds of stuff changed about my lifestyle and within my body as well. And it continued for a couple of years. And after making some changes to my life, I got much healthier. And now I actually feel like I'm kind of living in alignment with myself instead of against myself. So how I relate that to the Hanged Man is it was kind of a period of everything being turned upside down for me, and realizing that I was kind of living the idea of the good life or someone else's idea of a good life, and a death followed that for me, certainly. And it took some time before things came back around to being upright, but that's probably the most practical example that I could think to give of the card leading up to death as being a period of everything being flipped upside down, and then the successive phases of death that ensue beyond that on your way back to turning everything back around.
Nick, thanks for sharing that, because that's a very direct personal example of shamanic dismemberment and the sacred rite of self-initiation, where, I mean, in a sense, you may have you can say poor decisions, but I don't really go with shame. You may have unconsciously taken yourself to a place so against yourself because you didn't know yourself yet, but you keep going until it falls. And so in that sense, you probably had a Hanged Man moment that lasted a couple of years. And that's probably what it took your strong will and obviously strong life force now to actually perk up and listen. And I don't mean that it was a bad thing. There's power in that. And
oh no, I don't take it as a bad thing at all, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, it was a difficult period, but a period full of learning for me. And now things are the complete opposite. The past couple of years have just been marked by all these strange fortuitous events that I couldn't have planned, but it really just feels like now I'm living in alignment with something that's quite powerful. And before I was moving against it, and that also was quite powerful.
You've come to the right place.
Okay. So one of the things that we're trying to do here is to point out that these are archetypal features of everybody's life. They've always been with us, and they always will be in every culture of the world. And that's one of the reasons why the tarot is such a appropriate medium for learning about your life and meditating about your life and thinking about it, as Nick has indicated here. You can get your life into context by thinking about these, but everybody has a different take on it. So we have many more cards, and this will give you an example of how different people have looked at it differently. And so I think most of our group that has been here before has particularly appreciated the She-Wolf cards by Devani Wolf, and also the Starman series. They're both excellent writers as well as artists. Let's see, the Starman series is David Angelus, and so I want to read Devani Wolf's description. And so her card is on the left, and here's what she says. Death, Scorpio. Keys, death, rebirth, external change, cycles, artwork illumination. A simple composition, a cascading woman bearing the head of the ancient Egyptian god Anubis, stands triumphantly, receiving and giving of fate. Anubis is the guide into the afterlife, a god whose role is to fully embrace and accept the reality of death. From a light perspective, this card has always been taboo in that some people believe it to represent actual death of the querent. Of course, us tarot seekers and makers most account for the very slight possibility that this could actually occur. But what this card actually represents most of the time is symbolic death. There are two cards that deal with this theme: Death and the Tower, the Will of Mars. This is the external death side of the theme career, relationships, family, dynamics, life path, anything that occurs outside of us that affects us may pass into death, and we will feel the pain of its passing. When we receive this card, and she means in a reading, when we receive this card, we are being asked to let it go, just like the trees let go of their leaves each year. There is a deep wisdom within the tree, knowing that in mere months, life will blossom again anew. The death phase is an absolutely integral part to it all, one we must pass through. The more we can be accepting, the better off we'll be. We can control our reactions, and our perspectives, balance, to find more grace within the process of shedding. Okay, so when she says wheel, she means the wheel of fortune. And when she says balance, she must mean the justice card. Okay, shadow side. We wish for an eternal summer, basking in the warm golden sun, not in the cool gray of October. We may be clinging to things that no longer need to be a part of our journey. We have grown overly attached, sentimental, wistfully, wanting that which is now slipping away. Sometimes our attachments may grow even stronger when things take their leave of us, but this is purely out of the desire for comfort. A truly difficult and yet cherished lesson is that we can grow comfortable with things that no longer serve us or are even a detriment to us. Work to end this habit. Letting go can be an arduous process, but there is much to be learned inside of the suffering. And so many wonderful things await in our rebirth. Mantra: I die 1,000 deaths and am reborn 1,001 times. Okay, comments on that? Just speak up, because I
think that you
No,
can
you go ahead.
Jordan.
Go, Raquel.
I think that's great that this card mentioned the zodiac sign Scorpio, and at the same time, it mentions the Tower card related to the planet Mars. Scorpio traditionally is also related to Mars, but Scorpio in modern astrology is related to Pluto, and it's more about power and the transformation of it, but in the kind of like in a better side of the death card, in a sense of there's a gateway that you can realize within the experience of this card, that is the power that you can live through if you let go of the process of transformation, if you let it happen, you know, because you can realize that something is changing. And, you know, and my part and my experience, my intake on that was to not change, try to stop the change at all costs. And that is a powerful thing, because I think Nick's experience of having go through like an health issue, if you allow yourself to go through it and recover and change through the process, is much better. But when you don't allow that happen, the powerful thing is that it happens that you can see your life literally going away, you know. So that is the dark side of Pluto, but it's also the bright side of Pluto, which is, I also think it's amazing that in this representation, it's just, you know, gorgeous, you know, just open to the thing.
And she has her iterations here. She is emanating her multiple reiterations or her reincarnations. She is continually incarnating through life. And what really struck me, everyone, with this card is when, Skip, you got to the learning to let go and the importance of that with this card. And rather than a tarot meaning, what came to mind to me is one of my favorite quotes from Anai Nin, French author. And it's, there came a time when the risk to remain tied in the bud was far more painful than the risk it took to blossom. And I think that speaks to Raquel's portal point also. And then also back to Nick's experience, where tied in the bud up till 19, and you opened up to who you were.
I would like to jump in as well. There's a few things I'm getting from this card. One is, not only is she open, and I appreciate that Raquel made that point, but it reminds me of something in the previous card, in the Hanged Man, that I want to get to. But so Enriquez says you can strike the pose of what the person's doing in the card to get an idea of the meaning. So I was actually, I went out of frame, but I was actually in the pose. You can't see my head, but I look great. No, I can't see it. But,
Excellent, excellent.
I'm just being facetious. Sorry. No, but the hands is that she's not just open, but there's something about the formalness of it. It goes beyond just being confident like this. It's sort of like I said, flexing on them, but it's kind of like that. It's kind of like how in the Hanged Man, because it's stylized, and in the Hanged Man, there's 2 points I want to make. Which one goes first? Okay, slow it down. The first point I want to make is that, about the Hanged Man. Okay, is that in the Hanged Man, his foot posture is like what? It's a 4 or something like that. And
like a tree pose.
He's pretty much dancing a jig upside down.
And
dancing a jig or a tree pose in yoga, right?
And I think the king of, I don't know which king, is it Batons? I should know this. One of the kings does the same thing in the Marseille. He's seated and he has that same pose. And I was thinking, what is that pose? Like, who does that? You know, like it kind of indicates confidence or something, but like, who really does that? And today I saw someone doing that. I was standing outside of a building and I saw someone on their cell phone kind of with their foot up, and I realized, it's a move of confidence. It's kind of, it shows that the person feels kind of confident with their body, like you're in a situation, but it's not, you don't feel phased. And that's what, I bring that up because that's what I'm reminded of when I see this embodiment of a woman, she's not fazed by death. It has no sting. It's not just being open, it's being like, and it looks great on me. And how that feels to me in my experience is it reminds me of walking through the world as a woman is like the she-wolf is full of these images, but where the woman is naked, and that could be the most vulnerable position you can be in, but there's this courage with it. And it's like a sexuality expressed that can be vulnerable, but also has tremendous strength and power. And I feel walking through the world that there's often like, and I've heard other women describe this, like, let's say I want to dress up. I didn't really dress up. I just came all greasy today, but let's say I want to wear something because it makes me feel good, or maybe it's low cut or whatever. But there's that thought of, am I going to be safe if I leave like this? You know, sometimes there's a choice, unfortunately, of choosing between your femininity or healthy expression of your sexuality and then feeling safe. So going back to death, I think it's incredibly powerful that the image is of a naked woman who's not afraid of even death.
You bring up a great point, Samantha, because the one in the card that's naked versus the one in the card that's clothed, the one that's naked is the one in charge and in power. The one that's clothed still has things that they're cloaked by or masked by or hidden by or hiding from. And you bring up an interesting point with the foot posture and the leg, because it's very much a bird posture, especially the ibis uses it. And flamingos, you get all that. But when they cock their leg up, if you've ever put a pencil into a cup of water, it looks like it bends because it refracts. So if you see a fish underwater, it's not really where you see it. And so the magic of the ibis is always the seas beyond worlds, because they will strike at a fish, but they get it. So what happens is right before they're going to strike, they lift the leg. And in a sense, they have a foot in both worlds, one on the mud at the bottom in the water and one at the top. And so when that king does that, there is this, I have all worlds. I have all places in my realms. So it's also a metaphor and a symbol of the notion of interior and exterior worlds both together.
I just mentioned that when my father used to love to eat sushi, and the night that he died, my family was sitting around the dining table eating sushi, and we had a call from the hospital saying that he had died, and that asking if we wanted to come and see his body. And I said, no, he's not with you anymore. He's now with us. And, and
that's resonant.
You know, and that's the point. I mean, you know, whatever you may think of me in the long run, you know, in the end, when I go, I'm going to be with you. No matter what else you can say, good or bad. Go ahead, Colleen.
May I say something? Samantha, I love that you got in the position, and I fantasized getting in the position. And I realized that I got into real trouble around the foot posture. And it's almost a popular position that women take, I notice, but it's a powerless, you know, it's a very difficult position. And I'm surprised that in a card that is as detailed as this and so beautifully done, that it looks like it was intentional. So I'm wondering what you think about the way the feet are. Does this have something to do with death not being able to go anywhere? Or what do you think that means?
Are you asking me in particular?
I'm asking you and the others if anybody else has a take on that.
I could say something.
Yeah, would you? Yeah.
Well, it's reminiscent of the crucifixion because they hammered his feet. His feet weren't, well, sometimes you see the feet separate, but usually it's together like that. They're kind of one on top of the other.
Thank you.
Right.
Nicole? Is that Nicole?
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thanks.
And she's
So that was, you know,
she's
that's
almost in a crucifixion position here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And I'm really drawn to the key in the center of the black deck.
Yep.
It's just so activating because it's got so much in it, like from a postmodern perspective about death and the symbology, the fire at the bottom, the red streaks are sort of like fire. I just am really drawn to this card because it's so layered, you know, it's just, and the flower, the orchid is sort of sexuality, feminine. It's so feminine, while at the same time it's the aesthetic and it's about something so dark and unknown and spacious.
Yeah. Let me read his description of this card if it's okay. Samantha, you wanted to say something?
I can wait.
All right, let me read the description of this card. This card is from the Starman Tarot deck by Angela something, what is it? David de Angelis. And so there's first this sidebar, which says death, ending of a major phase is to be trusted. Surrender, awaken to life, new growth, strip yourself bare, shuffle off your current identity and rebirth yourself. Reversed, reluctant to change, stop living in the past, step into the limelight. Let go of your obsessive thoughts, awaken from slumber, greet the world with a new you. Okay, so now the full reading. I know that this too shall pass. Okay, that's what he has at the beginning as a headline. Then he says, this highly revered card does not signify physical death. It heralds the death of a particular situation externally or part of you internally. Like all major transitions, it brings with it substantial amounts of grief, anxiety, hopelessness, and fear. The end of a chapter in life can be hard to accept, but accept it you must if you wish to move on. Death depicts the ghostly resonance of an inhabited skeleton floating in space, an abstract environment with golden mathematical patterns. Nature, numbers, flowers, and other symbols indicate transformation. The skull and the withered leaves denote death and decay. The life and juice sucked out of form. The brilliant and seductive orchid blossoms represent regeneration, virility, sexuality, and fertility, the potent visual sensory language of flowers. Death and birth are twins, intimately linked. We can't have one without the other. They work together. One leads to the other, and the presence of one calls to the presence of the other. In a very real sense, we are living the cycles of death and rebirth all the time. Every night in sleep, we experience a mini death. The dissolution of awareness of the physical body makes way for the mental dream body, which then dissolves to enter deep sleep, silent, empty awareness. On his deathbed, the great philosopher Socrates exhorted his followers to practice dying as the highest form of wisdom. The Tibetans don't view life as a straight line from A to B like we do in the West. Rather, it's seen as a full circle where birth and death connect with one another like an electricity circuit that conducts energy. According to most branches of religion and mystical tradition, it is the soul, the repository of integrity and neutrality as witness, that continues to or transmigrates beyond death. Mind with its memories, ideas, and values are left behind with the body at death. Death indicates that sudden and unexpected change is imminent. The ending of a major phase of or aspect of your life is to be trusted. Death is the master cleanser. If you surrender to the process of dissolution, the letting go of situations and ways of being that you have outgrown, allowing it to unfold naturally, there will be much new growth, new life. We can use death as a catalyst to awaken to life. Ponder, for example, how you would live life if you knew you were going to die in a year's time. What authentic risks would you take? What conversations would you have? A Year to Live by Stephen Levine suggests that we don't wait for a death sentence. With every breath you take, someone in the world dies. Death, darkness, and difficulty are needed as much as light, ease, and flow. Reversed, stuckness and stagnation, living in the past and refusing to move on. Stop resisting, let go and let it be. Sacrifice the dream of what it should be. Alternatively, you may be resurfacing refreshed after a period of dead time. Okay? Comments?
I was noticing that, you know, Jordan, okay, I'll keep it brief because this is one of those comments, but since we got started, I think it's fair to mention it, is that, you know, Jordan uses the word yoni-verse a lot, which I really appreciate, and I hope we're all on the same page about what yoni means. This is the female genitalia, but also what it represents, the divine feminine, right? And sexuality and everything. Everything
that from which all emanates.
That, yes, the Eve, yeah, that which started it all, Divine Mother, all that, yay, big fan. But my point is that, so I would mention that, how that is in the she-wolf card, but it's also in the other card, which we don't really know the gender of the person because they're a skeleton. However, I guess I kind of assumed it was male. And I noticed that the key that Nicole was mentioning is also in the sacral area, the sacral chakra from which sexuality and creativity, you know, and the instinct for life come from that. So I thought that's significant that those are center points in both images of death.
And that's the origin of the Kundalini.
Mm-hmm. That's all I have to say about that.
Okay. Others on the reading from the Starman.
I don't recall. Did you mention anything about fire?
I don't think we mentioned anything about fire.
Okay. Gotcha.
One thing I have there is that I really appreciated when they where is it on here? Speaking of the quality of death and life together, and I had written death indicates that you yourself are the phoenix. Life and death are the same thing, or here, one thing. They are together a birth and death. Death itself can be birth's introduction. So there's that goes along with the birth and death hyphenated. That they were speaking to as death and life being of one and the same thing.
Yeah, I like that. I find myself really drawn to the numbers in the second card because there's the seven features, but there's another number, and then 7, 7, and it looks like an 8, but it's kind of in a different font than the other numbers, and it's kind of, but it's central.
Can you show it? Yeah. Can you point it out again, please?
It's in the middle. I think it's
1977.
It's right.
Is it 1877? So
where? It's 1977.
1977, like the year 1997 or 1977.
I don't see it.
Where is it?
In the middle. Like there's like the key and there's the numbers.
What are you talking about?
Where are the numbers?
There's
see
the numbers there.
Behind
1,
us.
9,
Yeah.
7,
Skip, can you
7.
zoom
Oh
in
yeah,
on it?
okay, right there.
Purple.
1977.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Thought it was crazy.
1977 in purple.
Is it a 9? It looks kind of like an 8, though.
It doesn't look like a 9 to me. It looks like an 8 ball or something like,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
circle.
and an 8 would have the recumbent angle. The curve would dive into a point, whereas the 9 would keep the curve like it is. I think that is a 9.
Is this
Yeah,
a reference to oh no, the Starman himself? Why can't I think of his name?
David Bowie.
Is this any reference to Bowie for anyone who's familiar with him? Because the creator did work
What was
on
this
project, right?
Ziggy Stardust year? That was earlier than that.
77. I don't know.
When did he die?
He died just a year or two ago. But
yeah,
the interesting thing about Bowie is that he went through all these different phases and different personas in his career. And he was Ziggy Stardust for a while, but then he also took on this like quasi-fascist persona. I can't remember the name that he operated under for that, but 1977 could be one of those years in which he killed one of his previous personas. I don't know, but it's just
that makes sense.
He also wore drag. I know someone who theorizes that he was like a trans woman who never transitioned. Side note. Interesting.
Yeah, I think his sexuality was really fluid. Like he was really ahead of his time in terms of, because that's what everyone's like now.
And his gender expression. Yeah, everyone is like that now. Like Lady Gaga and all that we wouldn't have had if he didn't do all his.
Yeah.
Well, he said in an interview, shame gets in the way of my work. Why would I be ashamed of what I find natural? I mean, so period, so this was a man of strength and confidence, and he knew he didn't know himself, but he knew where he was with himself and what he knew almost at every moment. And he was tortured, but at the same time, he lived it. So
that's sober. It all worked.
That 1977 makes me want to get a microscope and go through and see what other years might be embedded that aren't as big as that one.
Yeah.
I mean,
some of these other
9, but I don't see how. I was just zooming in on it, but then it went off the screen because I wanted to zoom right in to see what.
Keisha says 1977 was bowls. I don't know what that means.
Bowls? Spelled like bowls, like a bowl?
Bowie's Heroes album.
Yeah.
Oh, Bowie's Heroes album.
I just Googled David Bowie 1977, and it's funny that the album that David Bowie released in 1977 was called Low. Which, I mean, for me, plays perfectly to the symbolism. I mean, maybe it's intentional in this way, or maybe I'm just connecting it up. But like I was saying in my example of Jonah and the well, the thing that's interesting about that is he is taken to the absolute lowest point by this creature. And you used this expression a couple of times ago, Skip, lower than well shit. I mean, it doesn't get any lower than that.
Absolutely. Now,
Homo
sapiens says, can death also be the phase religious people go through, agnostic or atheistic, before they get back to having a relationship with the higher self?
Whoa, yes.
Actually, Jung spoke to that directly, because I think he said religion is a defense mechanism against the experience of God. So that religion is a way to not connect with higher self.
Yeah, all the priests and guys wanted to intermediate because it was profitable.
Right. Death and taxes, they're both always the careers that work.
Right.
Does Keisha have on YouTube, any further insight to that? Because that's, we have the low that Nick said, but she said the bowls.
Well, she said
Heroes album.
Yeah. She said embrace, and then she said he said he was just visiting here, quote unquote, and then 72 was Stardust. So I don't know what
Ziggy Stardust.
Yeah. I see. Okay. It was a spelling mistake. Okay. I want to move on to Ouspensky here. And so for Judith, I'm going to the Library of Esoterica, the Tarot volume, volume 1. By the way, volume 2 is coming out right around Christmas time, which is on astrology. And I've got my pre-order in. You might want to get your pre-order in too.
Yes. I'm really amazed at the values for their pricing. I mean,
incredible value.
Yeah, it's incredible, because usually art books of this, they're usually start at 100, 150 bucks easy, and they're making these very accessible.
Yeah. Okay, so P.D. Ouspensky in Symbolism of the Tarot, here's what he says. And so it's quoted in this book on page 273. Judith, that's where I am reading this. Fatigued by the flashing of the wheel of life, I sank to earth and shut my eyes. But it seemed to me that the wheel kept turning before me, and that the four creatures continued sitting on the clouds and reading their books. Suddenly, on opening my eyes, I saw a gigantic ruler on a white horse, dressed in black armor, with a black helmet and black plume. A skeleton's face looked out from under the helmet. One bony hand held a large, black, slow-waving banner, and the other held a black bridle ornamented with skulls and bones. And wherever the white horse passed, night and death followed. Flowers withered, leaves drooped, the earth covered itself with a white shroud. Graveyards appeared, towers, castles, and cities were destroyed. Kings in the full splendor of their fame and their power, beautiful women loved and loving, high priests invested by power from God, innocent children, when they saw the white horse, all fell on their knees before him, stretched out their hands in terror and despair, and fell down to rise no more. Afar behind the two towers, the sun sank. A deadly cold enveloped me. The heavy hoofs of the horse seemed to me in my breast, and I felt the world sink into an abyss. But all at once, something familiar had faintly seen and heard seemed to come from the measured step of the horse. A moment more, and I heard in his steps the movement of the wheel of life. An illumination entered me, and looking at the receding rider and the descending sun, I understood that the path of life consists of the steps of the horse of death. The sun sinks at one point and rises at another. Each moment of its motion is a descent at one point and an ascent at another. I understood that it rises like sinking and sinks while rising, and that life in coming to birth dies, and in dying comes to birth. Yes, said the voice, the sun does not think of its going down and coming up. What does it know of earth, of the going and coming observed by men? It goes its own way, over its own orbit, round an unknown center. Life, death, rising and falling. Do you know that all these things are thoughts and dreams and fears of the fool? Okay. So other comments?
I appreciate it being tied back to the fool.
Yeah.
What's going on in the fool's mind.
Right. Me too. Okay. So I
think it's just a powerful passage.
Yeah.
What's to be, I mean, there's a lot, you could talk forever about it, but I really appreciate, that's one of those passages you can hear and then just steep in.
Yeah, assuredly. Okay, we can go back to Stephen Heller now, and he's written the book called The Fool's Journey that we refer to occasionally. And so let me share his 2 pages on this card, which will also point to the Kabbalah. So here is death between point Sephiroth 6 and 7. And as Nick pointed out to us, it is represented by the key Nun. And so here's what he said. The 13th Arcana, an armored mounted skeleton rides over a field where, I don't know, Nick, can you read that better than me? Because I have a problem on the screen.
Sure, yeah, I'm gonna have to get up pretty close, but sure. It's funny, I imagine it's supposed to be an armored, but it says an armored.
Yes, it does. That's right. Actually, I can read it out of the book here.
It is pretty loving.
Yeah. Okay, I can read it, Nick. Now
Okay.
I have the book here. So, a moored mounted skeleton rides over a field where people of various stations in life are reduced to the common condition of lifelessness. In some decks, the traditional Grim Reaper skeleton is used for the same purpose. A square banner bearing a 5-petaled rose flies overhead, showing the perennial victorious combining of the 4- and 5-fold constituents elements of the cosmos. The river of life flows by peacefully, while on the horizon between the 2 columns or towers, the rising divine sun shines from its position of balance. The total impression created by this arcanum is one of change and renewal rather than irrevocable destruction. Then he says, this is the 24th path from Netzach to Tiphereth. Keynote, only the empty cup can be filled. If our hearts are to be irradiated with divine love, all human loves and attachments must pass away. The many must die in order to make one for the way for the one. Motto, O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? 1 Corinthians 15:55. And meditation, all endings are but beginnings in thee, O my glorious King, the central sun. May I remember it is in dying that I shall awaken to life eternal and to light sublime. May the darkness be brought to death in me, so that the light may shine. The night is passing as the day approaches. That which I have sown in the outer world must die, so that by dying it may awaken to new life in the world of my true soul. That which I have sown is not quickened except it dies. I shall welcome the destruction of all obstacles and unregenerate forces within my nature, so that I may be reconstructed in God. And we can remember that Jesus Christ, when he was speaking to his disciples, said that he had to leave. He knew that he was going to die and be crucified. And he said that he had to leave because only then would the Paraclete come, which was the Holy Ghost. And Dr. Jung was at the last dinner that he ever attended in New York City, was at the Plaza Hotel, and he was seated next to a Catholic bishop. And he commented about the Holy Ghost to the Catholic bishop, and Catholic bishop says, "Oh yeah, we don't talk about that very much." Okay, but that's the point, isn't it? That right? That, you know, the Catholic bishop wants to be the intermediary to God, but the reality is that Christ is here, you know, and I guess.
Well, and that they don't talk about it very much being the Sophia, the divine feminine, that they just from a liturgical or they're officiating. It's like,
my favorite book this fall is The Radiant Sutras by Lauren Roach. And my favorite passage after the prelude I urge you to all get a copy of this book because it is a wonderful book. In the prelude, he says, a language of love. The Bhareva Tantra is set as a conversation between the goddess, who is the creative power of the universe, and the god, who is the consciousness that permeates everywhere. For short, they call each other Devi and Bhareva, or Shakti and Shiva. They are lovers and inseparable partners, and one of their favorite places of dwelling is in the human heart. And then one set of 3 verses on this, page 23. Elaborate rituals and garish images may be useful in meditation when your mind is whirling with thoughts of sex, money, and power, wandering like an elephant in heat. Go ahead and use these tools, yet know, beating drums and blaring trumpets cannot summon the one who is already present. I am not a collection of incantations known only to experts. I am not a ladder to be climbed, a sequence for piercing energy centers in your body. I am not to be found at the end of a long road. I am right here. I just think this book is quite beautiful, and when I finally persuaded my wife to read it by giving her another copy, which I sent her gift wrapped from Amazon, so it arrived addressed to her. I had a copy, but she wouldn't look at my copy, so I sent a gift wrap to her and said, "You're going to need a copy of your own." And when she finally read it, she said, "You know, these are the sutras that the Tibetan Buddhist lamas always promise to teach you, but never do."
Skip, you know how you said they don't talk about the Holy Ghost?
Yeah. Well, that's what this bishop said to Jung at this dinner.
And you were talking about wanting a Christian tarot, but in the 5th tarot where they have that 5th element, ether, to me, that's what that is.
Well, yeah, surely it is. But the 5th element is actually us. Okay, we are the quintessence, and so that's why we shouldn't talk about it as ether, because ether also suggests air, and that would point back to the swords. But I think I figured it out for my satisfaction that the 5th suit should be the quints, which stands for the quintessence. And the quintessence is us, and the symbol for it should be the circle with the cross through it, which represents the 4 functions, and the circle, which represents the orb, and it's us that understands what all the 4 elements, all the 4 things are. And so in terms of the tarot, and going back to Jordan's comment about individuation, I used to think that getting to the top of one of the suits would be individuation, but that's not true. It has to be to get to the top of all the suits, and also to understand the major arcana, and maybe to do that, we have to do that in a 5th suit, which is our understanding. We're the only creatures in the universe that can understand what I'm talking about right now.
And I'm glad the 5th suit is there overtly in the 5th tarot, but from my mind, it's always been there in that the major arcana are the major vehicle for individuation, and each of the suits are basically a wheel or tire on the car, tire on the vehicle. And we have to go through all the different ways they connect and elementally. And then you end up at the end with the King of Swords as the last card in the deck, typically. And then at that point, you're playing with the full deck, so to speak, as both true and also a joke. But the thing to me is that you've come to unconscious for the fifth element rather than ether. And I go with Einstein.
No. Because that would be the fourth stage of consciousness. I've come to the fifth stage of consciousness, as described by Dr. Jung. Being, understanding, consciously understanding what all the esoterica are and how they fit in with everything else.
Right, it's capital K, knowing rather than believing. Yeah.
Knowing, you don't have to believe, you know.
Yeah.
And that's the fifth stage of consciousness. The fourth stage of consciousness was the 20th century when we killed 280 million people, when we gave up one religion. Okay, and which Nietzsche observed that we had already done because he said God is dead. And what the uniqueness of Jung is, he came back in the next generation and not only found the living God where he lives, but also how he goes about doing the work of the Godhead.
Right. In that sense, I think I resonantly agree with you, because I would take then the four altogether integrated become the fifth, just like the five main primary senses all integrated become the sixth sense. There is that higher octave of the deep knowing, as Jung put it.
Yeah. Now, I did see today, I was reading something that suggested that the major arcana are the fifth suit, which I don't agree with, okay, because the major arcana are the archetypal essences that are everywhere and always the same, regardless, and always will be. And so that, like the 13th key, nobody's going to get out of life alive, right? And never has and never will. And so I saw a painting of painting at the Museum of Modern Art in Washington, and it was a painting of a woman's vulva with legs spread, akimbo, and the name of it was The Gates of Heaven. So
well, there's the Yoniverse again. I mean, it's the sacred. It's this. I mean, that from which we all emanate. I mean,
right.
It's in metaphorically, it's the place of creation, which then is non-gendered. We all have that. Eric Neumann, the place of creation kind of thing.
Right. Okay. Now getting back to the keys, I've teed up a few other ones, and one of the ones I teed up is Jordan's key. So we might as well give Jordan an opportunity to promote his card. Oops, that's not it. That's the Hanged Man. Wait a minute. Let's see. I know I set it aside for you, Jordan. So,
well, I'm glad you're having a hard time finding it, because I want to find the Hermit really quickly, because that's, I think, the primary way. I'll keep it short and talk about the primary imagery structure and the way I put together that card.
Well,
yeah, there are two things I want to say before you guys get into this.
Okay, go ahead.
Number one, with all due respect, I resolutely disagree that there needs to be a fifth suit added to the tarot. I think the 78 cards is pretty, I don't know if I'd say perfect, but it's pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, I think it's really interesting, and this might be what you're about to say, Jordan, I don't know, but you bring up the Hermit in juxtaposition to this card. It makes me think of one thing that I like to do with all the cards is imagine them all on the same map. They're all part of one landscape. And I think that's really interesting, with the death card, like he's down pretty much as low in that landscape as you can get without actually being in the ocean. The Hermit would be like up on Everest. The Fool would be like on the other end of the landscape and like on a desert mountain or something.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. And I wasn't going to say that. I kind of smile when you said there doesn't need to be a fifth suit. I need to put you in contact with a friend of mine, most probably. And her joke when she saw it first was, oh God, I already do Canasta Tarot. I don't need that many cards in one of the decks.
Well, that's fair enough, Jordan. But
she was joking too. It
yeah,
was not to
but
disparage the deck at
on the
all.
other hand, the reason I like the idea of the fifth tarot or the fifth suit per se is because it makes us talk about the fifth stage of consciousness. And whether you agree that the traditional tarot needs another suit or not, well, maybe it doesn't, but at the same time, if we're going to enter the fifth stage of consciousness, we have to enact it as if it does.
Can I
Well,
ask
I
what you mean by the
agree.
fifth stage of consciousness? Because I'm not clear on that. And the fifth, the quintessence, the ether, all have to do with spirit, not necessarily consciousness. And that's already in all of the tarot as the aces. So
Well, but I would say the deep knowing, capital D, capital K, deep knowing. Jung said, I don't believe in God. I know. I have a knowing. And
I'm just completely unaware of what you guys mean when you say fifth stage of consciousness, fourth stage of consciousness. I'm unaware of that mapping of stages.
So Nick, what I recommend you do is read Murray Stein's book, An Introduction to, or Jung's Map of the Soul, An Introduction is what it's called.
Okay.
And that is the book that BTS picked up and made 2 albums about. And in that, Murray Stein goes through actually 7 stages of consciousness. And so what I think is, there's obviously over hundreds of years now, there's going to be a discussion of this. Okay, the people who developed the fifth tarot have already put that hat over the wall, and now we all have to climb out after it and discuss. And whatever doesn't resonate as true will fall away, and whatever does will stick. But nonetheless, the discussion is going to go on. And so whether we agree that it's necessary or not, it's the discussion that is going to count. And so I personally disagree with some of the ideas that are presented in the fifth tarot. I think that they went too far in the sense that they changed, they changed the names of some of the court cards, and they changed the names of the suits. So they made the swords, the feathers, and that sort of thing. And I think that sort of thing will fall away, which is evidenced by the Library of Esoterica version of the Tarot, because by consensus over 600 years, the thinking suit is the swords. And so to try to change that, I think that they're going to find themselves sliced up by the swords. And it's certainly not the feathers, okay, because the swords have a much different connotation than feathers. And so
it's funny. It makes me think of the saying, the pen is mightier than the sword, or I guess in olden times that would have been a feather.
Yeah.
They're actually utilizing air and on the air, like bird, horned, feather, for air. But what's interesting is that you have to make the attribution. So it's I would lean into agreeing that the feather actually is not ambiguous enough and not specific enough to direct to all of what the swords are.
The feathers slice air.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind anybody's tarot and what anybody wants to talk about it, because the point is it gets people to look inward and think about what it is that they think, what it is they believe. I'm not saying that my perspective is the right one. I'm saying that, this is my perspective, and we're going to be talking about this long after I'm gone. And And so, but my perspective is that, you know, the four suits are pretty well settled at this point. And so it's the question of what's the fifth suit going to look like, and what is it going to be its symbol. And I think that the symbol is going to be the circle with the cross through it, which is a reference to the four functions and the mandala.
And Skip, I'm having a similar experience with that deck where there are times when I go, oh, wow, you're really getting me to respond or to react. So there's some things that are setting me off, which I think are good because it refreshes the thinking and then turns around to, no, not so much. But I'm finding that it's the first deck in a while that I'm taking issue with in small and large ways, and then going, oh, wow, that's a good idea. I mean, so it's...
Yeah, well, I don't deny that there are a lot of good ideas in that deck, and I'm very grateful to Patricia for putting me in touch with it. And I'm very grateful for being put in touch with the idea of a fifth suit. I think that that's a brilliant idea, in fact, and I think a lot of the images, which I have a few of them teed up here, are also excellent. But you know, I guess I'm an old fuddy-duddy and too conservative about changing the other names. But
I know fuddy-duddies well, and it's not you, Skip.
Thank you. Okay. All right.
I actually feel like the conservative here. I feel like I'm being old-fashioned about the tarot.
It's Nick. Yeah, it's Nick. It's not you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So here's this is Jordan's card, so we'll let him speak for it.
And if you could just quickly unshare the screen, I want to hold the Hermit up to my screen, and if you can just take in this card, the hypervision coming out of the face.
Wait a minute, let me bring that card up. I
oh, you have it?
I have it from a couple of weeks ago, I believe. So let's see. If you're lucky.
While we're still on this fifth tarot thing, I just want to state my qualm very clearly.
Okay.
I think that the people who made the tarot were acutely aware of the fact that it wasn't 4 elements, it was 5. And it's not that they excluded that. I mean, I think it's all there, but it's also a pretty interesting analogy that it's also kind of not really visibly there. I mean, it's there, but maybe it's too ethereal for most people to see. But I don't know. The idea that people might have excluded that
may be the
not square for
problem,
me.
Nick. That may be the problem. I don't agree that it's there in the major arcana. And to the extent it is there, you and I, who have been studying this for years, yes, it may be there. But for the average new person who's just looking at these issues for the first time, I don't think it's quite obvious. And I think that the issues that Dr. Jung raises about the stages of consciousness are a topic that merit discussion and consideration.
And
I completely agree, but I also think that like it's veiled for a reason. I don't think it's supposed to be entirely obvious.
Well,
that's true, and that's what I was going to say. The omission.
So you're saying that we should just stick with the way the human being has been for the last 3,000 years and screw any idea of changing?
No, not at all. Not at
all.
I mean, that's
except for the
names.
Like, but... Except for the name, Skip, because you don't want those changed. So
let it happen.
Say again.
I said, wait, they're going to get in a fight. Let it happen.
No, we're not going to.
But I mean, an
interesting discussion. I mean, I'm just yanking Nick's chain.
We'll exchange. Our fight will be exchanging fountain pens. Going, no, I want that one. So.
Yeah.
No, I mean, obviously, I'm all for goading evolution along in the human sense, but in terms of tarot and tarot only, all I'm saying is that I think all of that stuff is already there. You just have to look a little bit harder for it. And I think an interesting thing to think about. Should something like spirit be just completely obviously laid bare in the tarot?
Well, I think it's not then, because what I think has happened is they made that corporeal, so of the visual overt, and so now there's a veil got moved further back. I mean, so now there's another veil.
Well, let's put it this way. I'm all about, and the reason this YouTube channel is here is I'm about bringing more people along, and so to the extent that we have arguments and discussions about this, that's good, because then maybe somebody else will get into the fray,
right,
and take a side and get more attention to the tarot and what it means and what it can mean for your life. So I'm all for the disagreement.
Right.
Right. Okay. So you're up, Jordan. This is your Hermit card.
So here's the Hermit card, and if you just kind of memorize just the shapes, and then the two things really here are the hypervision coming out of the eyes and the masculine, feminine, both face. That was important to make it, you can't tell under the robes. And then the puzzle piece of the sky, the night and the day, the night and the moon, and then the day with the eclipsed sun are two, literally, if you look up in the middle, two puzzle pieces. So that is how they literally connect. From that, then we can go to the death card. I could go through other items in here, but from that will be kind of short order symbolic pieces graphically to pull through to then the death card. Because what I did is I paid particular attention to the scythe. If you notice, the Hermit card is under the scythe and then flipped on the bottom the other way. It's a double scythe. So he's looking forward, and his front sky becomes that ocean, and then he's looking backwards, and his basically this huge kind of dark, deep indigo black cape of ostensibly the death figure emanates from him, from his dark point. So I really felt that the Hermit was that place of consolidation and of the simplicity of, here is that candle or spark of light and life in each section of the scythe. Of course, sunrise up to the back, and then I used the sky in the death card with the same color palette as the Hermit's robes. So I took him from within to also out to the expanse being the sky. At the bottom by the elbow, elbow of the horse is an Ouroboros, then looking into darkness. And then in the cape, you also see the Ankh, the symbol of everlasting life. And then some broken swords and discarded shields on the beach, symbolizing the battle that is over, and the broken pieces left.
Viva la battaglia.
yeah, exactly. La battaglia, exactly. So any thoughts with anyone on just this card as a death card?
I wish I had something more articulate to say, but this is pretty far out.
Yeah, I mean...
Well, you mentioned the Hermit before in regards to death card. Can you elucidate that?
Well, I wasn't necessarily making any connection, just going on what you said. I don't think I can. I mean, I can't think of any way in which they're really connected.
Can you I think expand on far out, because actually compositionally it's in the exact same posture as the RWS death.
I just mean far out, like it's pretty trippy.
Oh, well, okay,
like,
that way.
Far out, man.
Like super
What were you smoking when you developed this card?
Yeah, I'm smoking Jordan, like I always am smoking Jordan. I told you that story. I mean,
yeah.
No, my rock climbing buddies, I didn't realize for a year that every time we went climbing, they did shrooms. And I just didn't notice until, like, after a year, I'm assembling the fire. And I look over, and one of my friends is just calmly enjoy just watching me. And I looked thinking, this is way too experiential for him. He's usually like a hummingbird. So I look over and go, hey, what are you doing? Oh, well, shrooms, of course. We always do them when we come here. I said, we've been coming here for over a year. No one offered me any. Well, did you want some? No, but it's just courtesy. And he goes, besides, we wouldn't give them to you. And I said, well, why not? And he said, well, we do these to feel vivid like you are all the time, just because naturally you're on Jordan. And if you took them, your brain might explode. So anyway.
If you give that to people like you and me, it's not good.
Well, and I have to speak to go back to the fifth consciousness. I'm not all the way, but there is a deep knowing that I have in my art that I drop in pretty easily and come back. So I'm going to stop right there. But that's, what am I on? Me. So
yeah. Okay.
Well,
so thank you.
I thought it was cool about I didn't notice the hermits until you pointed that out. So that was,
well, I'm glad you did.
Far out for me.
And let me just say, so that everybody knows, that Jordan's deck is called Tarot in the Land of the Mysterium, and this is the deck.
Thanks for showing that.
And I've got it, and the box is so large that it has to be put on top of my books, but nonetheless.
And then it comes with a 192-page companion book. So
okay, so
thank you for that.
So that's Jordan's plug of the week.
We should only do it once a month so we don't spend everyone's time.
Okay, so here is
That's how you gotta be, self-promotion.
Sure. Okay. So I just want to go through a few more examples of different takes on the death card. As I go through and identify the decks that they come from, we can each talk about whatever these say. I'm not going to, because it's after 10, I'm not going to read all the write-ups that they've done, but this is the Sasaborito deck by Stasia something. Stasia. I happen to have it here, so I might as well give her name. Stacia Burrington. And the middle one is the Lion Strider deck by Ceola Thompson. And the right one is the Spirit Song Tarot by Pauline Cassidy. And Pauline has made her card be about the cicada, which sheds its skin and gets reborn in the new year. So what comments about this, any of you? Any of these cards?
Cicada? Were you saying cicada?
Yes.
That's how I've heard it said. I'm not saying it can't be said cicada.
Well, I don't know. I say cicada, I think, but I don't know if that's right.
Then we have to probably go with cicada because we say cicada in Texas, and that means it's probably absolutely incorrect with an accent.
That's where I learned about the word in Texas, cicada, but also they call them katydids.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
But no, katydids are actually a green-looking, thin, conish grasshopper.
Okay, never mind. It's cool.
I've heard both. I mean, I'm in the South. I'm not in Texas,
Right. Well,
but I'm in North Carolina.
On her deck, Pauline doesn't even call this the death card. She calls it the transformation, transition, and liberation card. And so anyway, anything else? What else? There's lots of things going on.
Wait, will you say that again? That she calls it something to do with liberation?
It says here it's transformation, and then underneath in smaller type it says transition and liberation.
Yeah, I have something I want to refer to here that relates to that, and I think it's pretty interesting, the idea of liberation being brought up. Okay, so earlier I said that the book of Exodus says that Joshua was the son of Nun, And it also says that Joshua means the nature of reality is to liberate. Which is just interesting that liberation is brought up.
The nature of reality is to
Yep.
That's curious.
The truth shall set you free.
Yeah, that's right where I was. Good call. Well, and also the wings are closed on this card, which means you're probably going to see 2 to 4 more large and small pairs of wings unfurl when those 2 cover wings open. So there's a transformative piece of flight that would come into this. I think it's an insect.
Yeah, it's a cicada. Cicada.
Cicada.
Cicada, cicada.
We gotta make a song out of that.
You say cicada.
Yeah,
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
I'm sorry.
All right.
Well, but the cicada, it's interesting. The cicada, especially, if you go back to it, I don't know if pardon, I'll slow down. I don't know if any of you guys grew up with them, but you'll find their brown shells stuck to trees because they will land on a tree and then they swell and crack their shell and then emerge from their own shell like a chrysalis and a butterfly.
Yeah, I can actually recall one summer where a huge wave of cicadas came through. It was when I was quite younger, and my 2 then brothers and I collected a whole bunch of them to take them fishing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they certainly kick around and get their fish's attention.
Exoskeleton, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And
yeah, behind her, there's a skeleton. Yeah.
And then Patricia is also saying, she says, I love them. We call them chicharras. So the chicharras.
Chicharras.
So next time I go get chicharrones on a burrito, I'm going to see if they have any chicharros instead. And probably wouldn't.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that. Patricia said that they call them chicadas.
No, chicharras.
Chicharas.
C-H-I. Yeah, chicharras.
Chicharas. Okay, so I was half right.
I think. Well, actually, I prefer that because cicada sounds. I don't know.
I like cicada.
All right, more decks here. All
right.
We'll come back.
Patricia sent me a comment asking if we could, if I can make a comment on this Hexen tarot.
On which tarot?
She recommended that we look up something called the Hexen tarot, Hexen.
Created at CERN?
She said it's What is CERN? I don't know what that is.
Isn't that the atomic multi-mile long circle?
Yes, that is.
Okay,
CERN
well,
is a technological enterprise that I know a little bit.
Yeah,
it's a big business.
Yeah. It made the web also. It made the web. Yeah.
Well, yeah, looking at the cards, that certainly placed the symbolism. She commented and said that she doesn't like them and she thinks they're quite dark. And I must say that I concur. They are certainly pretty ominous. Several of the cards, like the 5 of Swords, is all about Google. I don't know if you can see that very well.
They made this deck?
Yeah, and didn't the internet... Did the internet originate there, or did they just pick it up
Diogenes of Sinope, the Lovers is
Diogenes.
Margaret Mead and Gregory Bateson. Cybernetics is the Wheel of Fortune.
Who made that deck again? That's made by CERN?
It's apparently made by somebody who worked there named Suzanne Treister.
Creepy. They're watching us now, probably.
It's really strange because a great deal of the symbolism looks like it has to do, like they're old alchemical images just adapted to fit modern themes. They've got Aldous Huxley as the Fool. Nikola Tesla is the King of Swords.
That sounds like a political statement.
The Nine of Wands just says LSD with a big swirl. H.P. Lovecraft is the 5 of Chalices. So very strange. Patricia, I don't know about this stuff.
Thanks for sharing it, though, Patricia.
Yeah, we'll have to look into this.
What's the death? Actually, what's the death card? So let's just dial into the nucleus. That's a good point there.
Yeah, let's see.
Patricia.
I'm sure it's inherently dark. Let me see here.
Is it an atomic cracking?
Probably. I mean, there's several things about atomic
Atom
bombs
bomb?
on here. Let's see.
Either
John Van Neumann.
There go my people. I must follow them.
Yeah. I love that story. I love that story.
Nick, you should be able to share your screen because you're a co-host here. So.
Okay, let's see.
Yeah, there go my people. I must follow them. I love that story.
I'm going to have to Google this really quick.
What's that mean, there go my people? Like when I came here, I was like, nerds.
It's a story I told about Frank Burns, the real Frank Burns, who was a colonel in the Army, not the one in the movie, who was the head of Delta Force in the Army. Delta meaning the Greek letter delta, meaning change, the change force in the Army. And he is responsible for the Army motto, be all you can be.
Can everybody see this?
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, I can't get an extremely large image pulled up on Google. It's just everything seems to be on Pinterest or something like that.
Yeah,
so is political, the political bent. What's all the...
It seems like they're all highly political or have to do with big players on the internet.
So their death card becomes propaganda is what happens. That's where it all comes together.
Who is John Van Neumann? I don't know who that is at all.
Yeah, I don't remember. The name's familiar, but what does it say?
Yeah, the name's familiar, but I don't remember either.
It says the matician, or mathematician.
It also says quantum mechanics up at the top. So maybe he was a physicist involved with creating the...
What's the text?
This really is scary, Patricia. She said that in the chat that this tarot deck was scary, and she's right.
Yeah, I mean, all of the images are quite strange.
There's kind of a staticky feel to all of them, almost like modern news media.
Yeah, well, there's on the death card there, it has ENIAC, which was an early AI system, if I recall correctly.
Mm-hmm. ENIAC?
Yeah. On the upper left corner there.
All right, I'm going to get off this screen share. This is not working. In order to actually properly share this, I would have needed to download the image or something.
Trisha's comment in the chat is priceless.
yeah. Comparatively, yeah.
If you're gonna mess with two evils, we know where you're gonna have to choose.
Yeah. And wait a minute here. Curtis says, does the she-wolf death card also represent shadow integration? Yes, very likely. That sounds right to me.
He actually mentioned he counted through the iterations on the card there too in that comment, and I think a little bit further down.
Yeah.
And there were was it?
There must be 7, I suppose.
Yeah, the 7, same as the map of the soul.
Right. Okay, so let's just quickly get through these other decks so everybody can see the diversity of how people look at the death card. And so this is going back now. This is the Golden Dawn deck. Do you know why is this eagle here? Do you know, Jordan? On the Golden Dawn.
Well, the eagle is a symbol of higher sight, and I haven't used the Golden Dawn much. But doesn't it have the snake coming from below?
I can say why
it's fiery snake. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's the zodiacal sign of Scorpio. And without going super far into it, there are 3 expressions of Scorpio, and there's the poisonous scorpion, and there's also the serpent force, which then actually changes the poisonous scorpion into the elevated eagle.
And then sex, death, rebirth go right along with those three, right? Which is Scorpionic.
Right. And the one on the right is the Toth deck. Well, I don't know what lady, whatever her name was on when she was doing this deck.
She was, I think she was in my living room. That's
Well, there's the same symbolism in that one too. I mean, there's the poisonous scorpion down at the bottom, the snake, and then the eagle at the top. There's also a fish indicative of none. But this has to do with the mythology of Pluto or Hades, right, pulling on
underworld
the strings of life.
And this is underwater, so that underworld aspect has been illuminated, the Plutonic or Pluto aspect. And you have all these strings, like guitar strings that are connections, harp strings.
Yeah, I have to talk with you all about the golden thread at some point, but not tonight. And it doesn't have anything to do with this card per se. So we'll do
that's an important concept. So but if you look, you have the crab, the scorpion in the bottom, and then the upside down flower, correct? The is that a lily?
Yep.
That's dead and upside down. So you have that, the serpent also going over the fish. And the fish has the glowing eyes, like Jung's ichthyos, the fish yanked with glowing eyes from the deep, which is a symbol of the light and the unconscious, anglerfish. And
we already had the Rider-Waite deck, which is on the left here, but this is the Marseille deck. And so we see the closeness of the Marseille deck with the Bota deck here.
And in that Marseille deck, what's curious to me is this one especially, you have the water of life filling the sacral region and the spinal cord. And then you have this red heart at the connection at the sacral bone. So in one sense, it's the origin of life in a sense in this card image symbolically.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then you see the red on the bottom, the top of the scythe is the same red. It's a little more sanguine, a little more oxblood, but as the Chinese vermilion up in the sacral region, the heart at the base of the spine. What's interesting about the heart there is the hara, or 1 point, and 2 acuinches below the navel, the belly button, is also considered the second heart, or also the second third eye. So that's an emanation or beginning of life seed in the Marseille there.
Right on. Okay, let me get another one going here for us.
I just want to say the reason primarily that I ask you to put the Rider-Waite and the Bota deck next to one another is because when Paul Foster Case and other people constructed the Bota deck, they wanted to reinstate the integrity of the tarot. And Arthur Edward Waite, I've probably said this several times before, but intentionally veiled a lot of the symbolism. But it goes back to what I was saying in my presentation. You know, all of those guys in that era had oaths to their teachers, which they were pretty much sworn to secrecy to not reveal the deeper teachings hidden within these cards. I mean, they're there, but you have to really know the systems in order to be able to mine out the little chunks of gold that are in the cards. And in the Bota decks, like this, it's still pretty veiled, but it's not so veiled that you've just got to like know everything in and out to be able to get into the deeper meanings of the cards.
Well, and also, I mean, if I'm an anomaly pretty much, but I look at secret society systems with, say, tarot cards, and I'm going, you guys didn't hide it very well. I mean, and it's not, and even if you hit it, I'll still go, something's missing. Because to me, it's visual grammar. And a couple of the cards have bad sets of teeth. There are big, you know, like you colored them black or something, they're missing. So it, to me, it just screams what's not there as much as what is there.
Yeah, I completely agree, but I think you have to take note of the fact that you are pretty unique in that approach. You know, like,
well, that's why I said I'm an anomaly.
9 out of 10 people would not necessarily look at the tarot and think anything more than what they see.
Well, right, and it's the third option. So,
all right, moving on. This, as I said, is one of my favorite decks. I just like its simplicity and the fact that it links every card up to a story, a folk tale or something. And so this is the Tarot of the Divine, and you have to have the book that goes with it to appreciate the stories completely. But
the imagery in this deck is just exquisite. I mean, the velvet red tattoo of or is it behind the, there's a whole series of things just with that shaded skull character.
Can I guess what this is from, please, before you tell us?
It's the Tarot of the Divine.
No. Can I guess? Because you said there's references to fairy tales and things. I'd like
to.
Two things I'm getting. Okay. The first thought I had was Othello, which I doubt it's referring to. Okay, but I wanted to share that. So, second thought is this Little Red Riding Hood?
No.
Okay.
Okay. I'm just noticing all these people up here on the curtains to the bed, and you see that this is the silhouette behind the curtain, but in front of the curtain, it's an actual arm. Okay.
And it's a brown arm and a tan arm coming together in a white hand.
Yeah.
I think that's a shadow.
Gee, you think?
Well, I don't think so, because the shadow is in darker olive green behind the hand, and then the rendered shadows are darker, and that seems to be an actual color. There's not a whole lot of shade there.
Yeah. And the shadow will be the devil card, which we'll have in a couple of weeks. But I'll read this fairy tale to you. It's called,
that shadow. I was stuck on the hand.
Let Jordan have less.
I was stuck on the hand. You meant the capital S shadow, like the shadow figure. All right.
Yeah.
It's fine. No, I meant
okay,
shadow.
so I'm going to read the story here. This is the Bear King Valamon from Norway, Norwegian fairy tale. There once was a woodcutter with 3 daughters. They always have 3 daughters, right? And very little money. But one day, a giant white bear arrived at their doorstep and promised the family many riches if one of the daughters would come live with him in his castle. Though the 2 elder daughters were pretty, they were terrified of the bear. Only the youngest, who was also the sweetest, agreed to the bear's conditions and climbed up on his back. The bear carried her far and away to his huge castle, where all her needs and desires were met during the day. At night, something would climb into her bed to sleep beside her, though she never saw what it was. After she had been there for some time, she asked the bear for permission to visit her family. He agreed, but made her promise not to listen to what her sisters said. Her sisters, upon learning of the mysterious nighttime visits, convinced her to take a candle to bed to see what was next to her. The very next night, she lit the candle and found that something was a beautiful man. 3 drops of wax fell on his shirt, and he awoke with a cry. He told her he was King Valamon, and he had been cursed to be a bear. But now that she had seen him, he was forced to marry the troll queen's daughter. In a flash, he and his entire castle disappeared, leaving her cold and alone. She set out to find him, recruiting the help of the north wind to take her to the troll queen's palace, which was west of the sun and east of the moon. She found him right before the wedding was to begin and challenged the troll princess to a battle. Whoever could clean the wax from the king's shirt would get to marry him. The troll princess agreed, but when she tried, her black heart only made the shirt become filthier. The woodcutter's daughter took it next, and with her pure heart, the shirt became as bright and clean as new. The trolls conceded defeat, and the couple was soon married and lived happily ever after. Okay, so that's Yoshi. Huh?
There's a lot in that.
Yeah, that's Yoshi Tani's cut on death. She was obviously sleeping with death, which we all do every night. But it's a beautiful story, and you know, something that you could read to your children to scare the tar out of them, right?
Yes, right.
Okay.
Curtis asked a quote from Jung about listening and not missing the voice of the dead.
Oh, precisely. That's right. From Lament of the Dead. We're dealing with that, Curtis, in the advanced reading group on Wednesdays. So you're welcome to join us. We've done two.
Well, he posed it as a question. He said, "What did Jung say about making sure you hear the dead, or don't miss hearing them, or can you hear them?"
Well, you definitely can hear them, and they direct our lives. They definitely direct our lives.
Well, Curtis, we're studying this, the Lament of the Dead, on Wednesdays, and Skip's advanced reading group, and would deal directly with that.
Yeah. And so we've done 2 of the 15 conversations. We have 13 to go, believe it or not. Okay, so
I'd love to join you guys. Thank you.
So
happy to have you.
That's 1 o'clock Eastern time on Wednesdays. Okay.
Sorry, Skip. One thing. My point with that previous card was that you point out all those people on top of that, and to me, it was almost like the past was present there. Like death of the past was present in the death moment. If that makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
That's a great point. All those that have come before being the tassels and the curtains.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Right. Okay, so this is one with this is the Deviant Moon Tarot.
One of my favorites.
And this is the Mystic Mondays Tarot. This is the young writer who doesn't think it means death. You're not going to die. Well, you are going to die, but it doesn't. The death card in a reading doesn't mean you're going to die. But she's the one who said, "No, you are not going to die." That's just a common misconception of the death card. But it is the archetypal endings card, I would say. And so this card is from the Secret Tarot, I think. And this one from the Visconti deck, which is the very first deck from Italy from 1451, I believe.
Yeah, King Maximilian marrying Princess Sforza.
Yeah. The Sforza deck, that's right.
Yeah, Sforza.
The Visconti Sforza deck.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, moving on. I'm just trying to get through all the ones I teed up for today.
Great selection tonight.
Okay, there's at least one more panel here, so let's get this panel.
I definitely want to see that Splendor Solace card for the death.
Oh yeah, I have it here somewhere. I think I certainly have it teed up somewhere. I might have missed making a copy of it. We'll see. All right, so this is on the left here is the Mythic Tarot, and again, this is Liz Green's book, and the new Mythic Tarot, and you see the people offering obeisance and trying to propitiate the death. And then this is the Jungian Tarot by Robert Wang, and the bottom 2 are Melissa Townsend's 2 decks. This is on the left is the deck that she uses when she's doing readings, and on the right is the so-called Elted's deck, which she used when she was doing tarot readings in Greenwich Village. And Melissa Townsend did a couple of Wisdom Path sessions with us in the summer. So those were very interesting. Also,
the Robert Wang deck there, I'm not trying to be facetious so much, but this, the American Gothic, the Mom Pa Kettle, it felt like Mom Pa Kettle got a divorce. American Gothic is now on 2 different pages, American and Gothic. And just it's the farm implements and then the separation across the field.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be brother and sister, but everyone assumes that they're husband and wife.
Yeah.
Maybe they're both.
I was going to say, it depends on which state.
Say it.
After 3.5 hours, I'm not going to go into it. If you want
no. It's
the idea is to show people that all these things exist. I'm going to sort of limit our further. Here's the Splendor Solace one, so I'm sure that's worth looking at.
And Patricia mentions in the chat, Jung thought that the Bardo explains that the spiritual climax of life happens the moment it ends, so that the French orgasm or le petit mort would be that final act.
Yeah. Okay, now where is the Splendor Solace? As usual, I have this heap of books in front of me. The one on the right is the 5th Tarot.
Has anybody here seen the new documentary that Netflix put out called Inside the Saqqara Tomb?
No.
Oh gosh, it is freaking phenomenal. And it's just about this excavation team that they're digging around the Saqqara pyramid site, and they find all of these tombs and sarcophagi, and it's a phenomenal documentary. But
it's on Netflix.
Yeah.
And isn't that the one where they started to discover the not just the sagittal section, Eye of Horus, but then the falcon and all the different? Or am I thinking of a different?
That sounds like something different. This one like just recently came out, I think, in the past 2 or 3 weeks. And I mean, it was only last year. I think it was March 2019 that they made the discovery.
Yeah.
What's it called again?
Inside the Saqqara Tomb. Yeah, it's absolutely stunning.
And it's SAQAARA,
I think.
SAQUAARA.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Cool.
We'll find it. And also, everyone should go see The Queen's Gambit. It's a mini series, and if you haven't seen it yet, it's phenomenal. And after you've seen that, then go see Emma, which is the same actress. Anya Taylor-Joy is the actress that leads in both movies. And just to see the difference in her performance in the two is really incredible. But don't miss The Queen's Gambit. It's just an enthralling movie.
And when you're done seeing the second one, go see Thoroughbreds, which has the same actress in it.
Oh, really? Thoroughbreds. And where is that? Is that on Netflix?
I don't know. It was in theaters, but I bet you could find it now somewhere. It was based on a play. Movie based on a play. She plays a high school student. It's really, really, really quite good.
Okay, she's remarkable. I mean, I've been enamored with the acting of Keira Knightley for many years, and she's the first actress since Keira to really get my attention. Okay,
wasn't Keira in Pitch Black with Vin Diesel way back when she was really, really young?
I don't know, maybe.
I'm pretty sure she was also Jung's mistress in A Dangerous Method.
She was!
Yeah, she was.
But
Well,
she was pitch black. I think I know what you're talking about. Different person.
I'll start those after I finish the discovery of witches, because I'm now infatuated with that.
Okay, so quickly, let's read through the Splendor Solus here. So here's what she says. I am the white bird, inner alchemy of death, child of the great transformers, lord of the gates of death. I come that you may reimagine stereotypes, releasing my triumphant, ever-living powers. I am artisan of the imaginative intelligence, bringing you vision to create your inner images and stories in like manner, the harmonious elegancies. All Sun-Venus experiences in the four worlds are woven into my alchemical path. I am the white soul bird of threefold sublimation, a noble Scorpio eagle rising triumphant over the worldly abuse of Mars energies. I bring enlightenment to the horsemen of peace, whose message of transformation is received as nothing but an ending. My red degree of heat releases forms bound by human ignorance. Turning to face the sunrise once more, they are transformed, taking sublime, ever more radiant appearance. My dear alchemist, I teach the great truth that all changes are changes in mental imagery. Allow stereotyped image a new life. Make the corporeal things spiritual and make volatile that what is fixed. Hear the true celestial music of the divine heartbeat, whose rhythms are constant in all worlds. Take refuge in the animating sun behind the sun, where all truths are born again and again. Okay.
Yeah, the reference to the sun behind the sun is a reference to Pluto, and that's also why in the Bota card up in the top left there's the seed, but it looks like there's a white sun within the seed. So it's always, anytime that you see a white circle in the Bota deck, I think probably in the Rider-Waite deck as well, it's a reference to Pluto being the sun behind the sun.
It is.
Right. Okay, so one more. I mean, after I've dissed the fifth Thoreau, I want to say that I really like the imagery used in the fifth Thoreau as well. And so this is from what they said about.
Actually, Skip.
Yeah.
One line from the Splendor Solus there is very, very modern. All changes are changes in mental imagery. That's, change your thinking, you change the outcome, manifestation, everything that's going on now.
Yeah, it's very Jungian too.
Yes.
Well, it's also because, and I'm sure that they know this, and this is why they incorporated that, but without going too far into it, Kabbalistically, each card has an intelligence associated with it, and with the death card, it's the imaginative intelligence.
Okay.
So what they're saying is the world is primarily transformed through your reimagination of the world.
Right.
Well, and that's actually how I chaptered my books. It's energetic imagination, communicative imagination, fulfilling imagination, and solidifying imagination for the different suits.
Yeah, it looks to me like Splendor Solus was still back in the warfare times.
Right.
Right. It was published in 1582. So, okay, moving on to the fifth Thoreau. This is the image in the fifth Thoreau for the death card, which the subtitle is Ending Detachment Portal. The death card is one of great potential. As death is a natural part of the cycle of life, it indicates both an ending and a beginning. Best not to resist, but allow death to take its course. Death is symbolic for death of the ego, a letting go of the old self so the new self can be reborn. Let go of any fears in your mind and open your heart to love. In business, you are in a good position to transform an idea into something new. In relationships, it may be time to say goodbye to those who are unhealthy and not life-giving. Okay, so that's what they say.
And it's really interesting. I'm making a connection to something I learned from that Saqqara tomb, which, by the way, Susie commented and said that is actually called Secrets of the Saqqara tomb.
Mm-hmm.
So, although I'm sure if you search Saqqara on Netflix, nothing else will come up. It's in the chat. But the thing that I learned from that documentary is that within this tomb that they're examining and trying to figure out the story that's being told on the walls, that they would dig these shafts down in the floor. They would have this elaborate tomb with all of the different stages of their life and the things that they want to take with them to the afterlife and all the gods and everything. But they would also put what they called a false door, because they believed that their tomb would be a house for their soul and a place for them to come in and out of the underworld and back into their tomb and kind of go between the worlds. And it seems like that might be what they're talking about here with this being a portal.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a beautiful painting.
Yeah.
Then you get the priestess, gold crescent,
and
morph at the top.
Interestingly, this reference to the high priestess from the Rider-Waite deck.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was talking about, the golden crescent, but then put more through, that's actually Pluto then, stylized at the top half of Pluto.
Right, and there's the eagle on her dress.
That, and actually the whole thing is Pluto, because if I take her body as a straight line down, then the crossing is then the boat and a giant Pluto symbol astrologically.
Jordan, do you know that we can't see you? Is that intentional?
What's that?
We can't see you. We see male.
We're seeing your mail now.
There you go. That's better. The other side of the desk.
Okay.
Anything interesting? You want to say?
Anything essential? We still have quite a number of followers going on YouTube. I'll just mention we have 18 people still listening, and
hardcore.
Yeah, and usually that means that we've had like 150 to 200 people through the evening. And that's one reason for cycling back as we talk about these things, because, the average time that somebody stays on one of these videos is like 12 minutes or something like that. That includes the 50 to 60% that drop off in the first 45 seconds. So it means that, some people are, we have 18, 19 now that are here at the end. So anyway,
that's strong. I mean, that's actually, from a stat standpoint, that's really strong, because usually this length of a show, people just literally, like you said, they just don't stay.
Yeah. And Tammy Hanley says, amen to the Queen's Gambit. And Absent-Minded in West End says, you guys are the best. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, we've held together. This has now been a 4-hour show.
Yeah, because our hour before. Yeah.
I mean, we did an hour before we came online on YouTube. And we now have 21 on YouTube. So
that's excellent.
And
I started out as a YouTuber. You could be like me. Come be a panelist.
Right.
You guys complimented my comments.
Yeah, we threw out a rope. Tried to come back. I remember that was like weeks ago, but please come on.
Yeah, let me see if I can. Okay, I just put the link for it to register there. Register there. Okay, which is the link for what we're doing, so that if you want to participate in our panels, we would very much like to have more participants with us in the Zoom panel. We do this every Monday evening. Nowadays, by consensus, we're doing a 1-hour conversation led by Nick before we go online. And then we're doing the card of the night starting at 8 p.m. But at 7 p.m. Eastern time, we're starting a conversation about what it is we're going to do with the tarot. You'll be shocked.
It's risque. I mean,
yeah. So anyway, if you register for the register on the list on MailChimp, you will be invited, and you may come at 7, but otherwise you won't see us until 8. And so next week we will be doing the Temperance card, Temperance. And that's always been a card that's fairly mysterious for me. I can never remember what it is. So I expect to learn a lot about it in the coming week. And well, I already know fairly well what it's about. But
nice, Susie. Yeah, Sagittarius says it all.
Yeah.
Right.
Hi.
So I'm going to shut up here. And
oh, you too, Raquel?
Yeah, yeah.
You're a Sagittarius, Jordan's a Sagittarius, and Susie?
Yep, but...
Nice.
Well, actually, I don't know if she's...
I don't understand it, though. I don't
know if Susie said.
I'm a Sagittarius.
Yeah, so yeah.
Taurus.
And then I have my danger zone Sagittarius, Capricorn moon conjunct the ascendant. So it's like, okay, which way am I go?
Yeah.
That just got complicated.
Free flow or, oh my God, I need so much order. Oh, well, we see it happening every week. So,
yeah. So thank you, everyone, for cooperating
Thank you,
and
Susie.
participating.
Make it complicated.
How'd we do, Nick? I tried. And I was like,
I'm a Libra.
Nice. Where's your moon? Do you know?
No, not offhand. I somewhere Penelope Ryder did a birth chart for me, but I don't have.
Well, off air, I'll get your off air. If you give me your birth dates, I'll run your charts.
Will you?
No, let's not do that yet. I have enough that I mean, I showed you last week my heap, and it takes me half a day.
Heap.
Takes me a half a day to clean up my heap and put the cards away for this week.
So today's metaphor shall be: we shall weekly reheap.
Yeah,
because next week you'll have a different. Next week you'll have a different heap.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm messaging.
What did you say, Samantha?
I'm messaging you. Just don't leave before you read my message.
Okay. Well,
what zodiac sign do you guys think that I am?
Capricorn.
Leo.
Oh,
you're Leo.
Virgo.
Leo is Scorpio.
Are you a Pisces?
You're a Virgo.
She says that with such like. Like my mean girl says, Pisces no cool.
yeah. I'm glad I'm not a Pisces.
What are you?
You guys are all wrong.
Or a Taurus.
No, I'm a my sun is in Cancer, but it's funny. I'm a Sagittarius rising.
That's helpful.
The best one for Cancer. Congratulations. Yeah.
That Sagittarius put some holes in that closed Cancer house. I mean,
big time.
Well, Cancer usually knows what's going on. They feel it going on, but it's a house with no doors and windows, so it can't come out. I mean,
yeah, it's funny. I really don't feel like a Cancer 9 times out of 10, but
feel like
that's what my parents tell me.
That's what Sagittarius rising does. That I think with most of water signs.
Mm-hmm. And you kind of get a steam quality. I mean, it feels to me like you're kind of a temperance card in a way with Sagittarius and Cancer, because they're not polar or in a total opposition, but they're close, and they're very much volatile in terms of reaction. Simply because of the difference.
The most interesting thing to me about my birth chart is that I have Pluto conjunct Jupiter in my 12th house.
Oh,
nice.
That's nice.
Yeah.
what all this means.
Oh, this is so
I
good to
just-
Astro Geek.
It just means that those two planets are almost
Together.
exactly together
What's-
in orbit in the final decan of the zodiac.
And the
which is
12th house
still probably complicated, kind of, but
a lot of shamanic work. I mean, 12th house is also the swallower, the abyss, and you have those biggies in there, and you can go in and you're protected.
Yeah.
I mean, Pluto's natural transformation. What's your orb? Do you know of the conjunction of Jupiter
Samantha,
Pluto?
I'm giving you the
I don't. Not right
phone
now.
number.
Thank you.
That's a really good combo, especially with the Sag Cancer. You should. I would suggest you look at that as an ally, because it's not going to be easy, but that's intense in a really, really hot way.
Thank you so much, Skip.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of weird stuff going on. Like I said in that email, I've also got my midheaven at like right on Virgo, and
I knew there was a Virgo.
Well, okay, so I'll confess.
Okay, we've devolved into gibberish now.
This is astro geeking.
Yeah. So Samantha, I've sent you Melissa's Gmail address, and so anything else that is relevant to death and the death card?
Reheaping.
I have to get on with
reheaping.
No.
Well, you've got Jeannie.
Jeannie tomorrow.
Yeah, Jeannie tomorrow.
rather than reheap, now Skip needs to deheap.
Yeah,
And I do
tomorrow,
as well.
Okay, yes. Let me just mention that tomorrow we will be having the book launch for Jean Raffa's new book, The Soul's Twins, which is going to be published tomorrow. And you can, if you go to Amazon right now, you can probably pre-order it at the pre-order price. It's called The Soul's Twins by Jean Raffa, R-A-F-F-A. And Jeannie and I will be launching it tomorrow at 5 p.m. on Facebook and on Zoom. But you probably can't get into the Zoom because it's just her and me on the Zoom. And
actually, I got a I think invite link.
Yeah, you might be able to observe it.
Yeah, I think it's
right. I think Jeannie and I are the only ones that are going to actually participate.
Right.
And she's a brilliant writer. If you have any doubt about it, go to her previous book, which is called Healing the Sacred Divide, Healing the Sacred Divide, for which she won the Wilbur Award, which is based on Ken Wilber, of course. And that one, you will find if you buy that book, you will find my comment on the dust cover, but you also, if you go into the reviews, you'll find my review is the first one on Amazon.
And she has an interview out with Susan Scott from the Western Cape in South Africa that actually I watched early this morning. That's on YouTube. She's really good as an interviewer too. It was a really solid interview.
Yeah, so
very interesting.
So I have to get enough sleep so I can do a proper job on that.
Right. Yeah.
So Amelia Sandra Zerlich asks, is there an astral meditation? Does anybody relate to that question?
For death?
Look up Marsilio Ficino and Astral Magic.
Do you do divination type things, Nicholas?
Do what?
You do divination type things.
I'm
not using the right word, but I mean the supernatural aspect. You guys talk about how you read.
Okay, so how do you spell the name so I can give it to her?
Marsilio Ficino.
And actually, on my website, I have the Black Crucible of the Magician meditation. and also death as a master gardener in a meditation, not just the article.
Okay, so what was the name, Nicholas?
Marsilio Ficino.
Yeah.
Do you want me to type it in the chat?
What was the name of the book?
Astral Magic. If you just, I don't know if it's a book. I just know that there's several YouTube videos on it. I mean, Marsilio Ficino was the court astronomer and astrologist and physician for Cosimo de' Medici in Florence. And,
Okay.
But
all right. So thank you, everyone. It's been real.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for sticking with us, or getting with us and sticking with us, all the new folks. And especially also
good stuff.
Colleen is still with us.
That was fun.
So that's a long ride. Okay,
Bye,
it's
everybody.
yeah, 4 hours is enough. So I'm gonna close it up. Good
Almost
night,
like a
everyone.
season. Good night.